There are times when I feel like I am just killing it as a marketer. Things are going great here and now, and everybody's really bought into that long-term vision. I feel like I'm gelling with that executive team. They've really bought into the wisdom and the value of our methodology and our methodic approach, and everything is just going great. And then I hear my alarm, and I realize it's time for me to get out of bed. Hey, Rogue Nation, it's Chip Rosales here, and I'm so glad that you are here with us for another episode of While You Were Working Live. If you've got that feeling of you really would like to be a successful marketer, but you're wondering if that's just a pipe dream, you are really going to find value in today's episode. Today, I am joined by Diane Walker, and she is the chief marketer and a business development strategist. You've probably heard of the kind of places she's been: HP Enterprise, McAfee, SAP, JDA, just to name a few. And she's also a proud alumni of the Mean Green. And one of the things I find very, very interesting about her, I'm sure she'll talk about it in this episode, is her passion for promoting women. And so she's involved with a group called Women with Promise. As I was thinking about this, as we were doing some research for this, Diane, and we were looking online, and we noticed some really interesting headlines. Things like CMO is the most dangerous title, how CMO is the hardest job to get right, how being a CMO is not what it used to be. And so, Diane, today we're officially making you part of the Rogue Nation, and it would be very interesting for us to hear a little bit about how you've been working really hard to stand out in that space that's so difficult to break into. How have you been standing out? How have you been doing things differently?
Thank you, Chip, for that introduction. And I'm a big fan of Rogue Marketing, so I'm very pleased to be here with you today. I think as I look at how marketing has evolved, particularly the last decade or so, a marketing leader really needs to be a blend of both the art that we know in brand and look and feel, certainly in content, but also on the analytics side in kind of data intelligence. So it is a blend of both art and science. But when I look over in my career path, I really came to figure out, and I can pinpoint the exact moment where marketing could be more. So early in my career, I had the good fortune to report directly into sales. And during my first sales meeting, it came for the marketing portion. And the only question that was asked was, so what is marketing doing to build my pipeline and move my pipeline into close? And I had never been asked that before. So, there was a litany and laundry list of marketing activities, but I realized then and there that I needed to be more strategic. I needed to understand the business, and I needed to understand sales and sales methodology. So as the quarter went on, I attended a sales training methodology. I got to understand their lingo of what was in pipe, what was a bluebird, what was a sandbag, and all the different things that I was able to do with either net new customer acquisition or expanding current customers, and then, of course, customer retention. So there's kind of a three-pronged effect there where marketing can really influence and create attribution and contribution in those areas.
I love all those aspects, and I think one of the really cool things is that sales, that BD component alongside that marketing, and being that sales-driven marketing leader really is the new normal. I know one of the things that you've talked about, or we've learned here at Rogue, a lot of CMOs leave really big organizations like you've been at, and they go to smaller organizations, and they kind of look around and things look a little differently. And I know you've had some experience of doing the same thing. You've done the exact same story. You've gone from the really big and you've gone to some small. Can you tell us a little bit about some of the shocks that you've experienced while when you've done that? Maybe some of those unrealistic expectations that get placed upon marketers like yourself?
Oh, sure. I think there are some universal goals, no matter the size of company, no matter the size of budget. The number one rule is marketing drives business growth. Marketing aligns to the business plan and aligns to sales. In my experience, what I've found is working for large global enterprise companies, they tend to have the strategic long-term vision where they dedicate budget, people, time. They allocate the right tools and technology for marketing to be successful. And that is a long-term vision. On the flip side of that, I have found that some smaller privately held companies are really tactically focused on the short term. It's the quick hits that get you by quarter on quarter. So I think for me, those are the major differences.
So what do you think it really takes for somebody who's leaving those organizations and coming to a smaller organization, or just taking on a new CMO responsibility? What does it take for a CMO to be successful these days?
That's a great question. And I think in either scenario, I think what you really have to do is be able to demonstrate marketing as a business driver. In order to do that early on, you need to set up some key collaboration with stakeholders, and not only sales, but I think also with your CIO, your CFO. Certainly, in most instances, you're reporting to the CEO. But, the CFO plays an important part as well. So if you look across the C-suite, they all have different avenues and different perspectives on what marketing can do for their organization. For instance, CEOs are all about business growth, whereas maybe a CFO is really about budget and kind of containing that budget and reining that in. Which is important when you come to tools and technology for marketing. There's so many MarTech software out there right now that can assist a marketer. And so you have to be able to make sure that you're choosing the right technology at the right price at the given time. So, really understanding the C-suite across the board and how that maps to the customer experience is widely important. So I think that's your first step. The key is collaboration.
Well, and I've heard you talk a lot about, there are some things that marketers or chief marketers, lead marketers need to do early on, those first 100 days, those first 90 days. Do you have some no-brainers? These are things that you just absolutely must do in those first 100 days. How do you do some of those things that you were just talking about?
So I think really you need to set up like you said, your first 100 days and really stick to a 90-day plan. The first 30 days, you really need to understand what your current state is, and you've got to keep the engine running. So do a quick SWOT analysis of, what the strength is, what marketing tactics are working and which ones are not. Then you look really at opportunity. If we pulled this lever this way or turned down this lever, how can we rebalance not only the strategic plan, but the tactical plan and make some incremental improvements during that first 30 days? I like to always give a formal document and walk a CEO through that SWOT analysis and really cushion that with the strength portion of the document, but also talk about the opportunities and what are real threats to the organization and how marketing can help address those.
Yeah, I love that. I know one of the things that you've kind of alluded to, you've talked about the science and the art component of a marketer. You've talked a lot about accountability and just that marketers have a higher level of accountability to the organization in these days. What are some of those things that you're finding marketers are having to become even more accountable for?
I really think it's all about the numbers. In order to demonstrate your contribution to the organization, you really have to track what marketing's doing, not only at the MQL, the marketing qualified lead stage, but through every conversion point and what those ratios look like. When sales accepts your lead, when it's qualified, when does it become an opportunity, and certainly what that contribution is to actual closed business and booked revenue. I had a VP and general manager of a big company say to me, Diane, I think it's great that you can show marketing influence and attribution, but tell me how you help me close the numbers. tell me how you helped me close that deal. And so, well, as a lead marketer, you think about what that entire cycle looks like. And then where you're maybe not as strong, put in more tactical efforts to make sure you bring those numbers up, because it shows up at the end of the funnel in book business.
Yeah, you're definitely singing our song over here. This is definitely the kind of thing that we see a lot as well. We spend a lot of time making sure that as a marketer, that the business understands that we really do understand the difference between growth and profitability, that you understand what that roadmap to revenue actually looks like. So these are the same kinds of things that you're talking about. I know that even as marketers, we're having a lot of conversation. This week, Nike did a big push. Obviously, Nike's been in the news a lot. And even now, marketers have to not only just assess what's their value proposition and where do they, it's that what stand are they taking in the marketplace and who are they alienating? Where is that? Is that really in the best business? Is that strategically right for the business? There's people on both sides of that argument saying Nike is absolutely thinking about this from a business perspective and doing that. And there's people on the other side who are just saying, I don't think Nike was thinking about this and what it was going to do to their business. I think we'll find out, here in the next 6-9 months. But I think as marketers, we've got to be doing all of that. And then we've got to be thinking about cost per acquisition and how you sustain that type of growth. So it does, as you were indicating, it really does mean a lot more accountability for marketers.
Absolutely. And you brought up an interesting point about the CMO responsibility really now for cultural issues. And whether that be talent in the talent area of what you're hiring and how diverse your hiring practices are, whether it's what you're doing for your customers. Customer experience is exploding. There are a lot of companies that do it really, really well in the B2B space. Alicia Tillman, CMO for SAP, is phenomenal. She's a great example. And I love what Microsoft is doing across the board with their corporate level messaging and identity and positioning now.
Wow, those are great. We'll do some links to those in our show notes so that other people can kind of follow along as well. One of the entire premises of this show, what we do, it's called While You Were Working. It's while you're working. And the idea is as marketers, we're just really, really busy. We're doing a lot of things. We're trying to do the right things by our clients. We're trying to do the right things by our internal teams. And sometimes we're so busy in the day-to-day that we forget to look up and see what's going on around us. And so we always ask our guests each and every week, what are you seeing out in the marketplace right now that, maybe people aren't paying attention to, but they should be?
I think that there are so many things going on, so many priorities. And, there are a couple of things that I can think of. And when I think of the basic tenets of not only content being king, but, I would add data intelligence, demand gen, and marketing technology to that royal family of high priorities. But in that mix and in your day-to-day, as you say, in the busy lives of content champions and et cetera, I think sometimes where I see a little bit of, I won't call it neglect, but maybe secondary actions are around sales enablement. We've got to remember that marketing drives sales. Sales is our number one stakeholder. And so I think as you build out content, we're always concerned about how many ways can we repurpose, our content Bible into different tactics? And we're always thinking about the customer and the customer experience, and absolutely a priority. But we need to think about the companion piece of how we build around sales enablement. How do we help our sellers sell? How do we create material that comes in a package that's easy to access, that they can get the full scoop on whatever solution suite or product that they're going to approach a prospective buyer or even expand a current customer relationship? What does introducing that look like? Starting at a high level of market landscape with support from market research, great stats, infographics, to really set that tone and then demonstrate your company as a leader in that space. Again, you mentioned it before, clear value proposition, key differentiators. And the most important thing is being able to demonstrate the possible and probable business outcomes once you partner with your company? What does that look like? What strength of that customer relationship do you have, and what they can expect? And from there, you can build your other and fit in your other external facing assets to kind of follow that sales cycle or map to the buyer's journey of brand awareness and thought leadership through consideration, through the short listing phase, and then certainly in preference with really putting either customer testimonial video or customer case studies in front of that prospective buyer. So I think sales enablement tools, I've been in and out of running those organizations for the past decade, and it really has exploded the last few years. There are companies that do it really, really well, but I will tell you, you need to understand how your sellers sell, and that'll make you a great marketer.
Yeah, I love that. And you also mentioned that content is data is another member of that royal family, if you will. And I know that's one of the things that you are super excited and passionate about talking. Have you seen anything new on the data horizon, something that you've been able to use or implement with some sort of effectiveness that you think our audience could benefit from?
Oh, absolutely. I think data intelligence, and the sources of those data all work together. Early on, when I was really getting to be, and proudly, I might add, a data nerd. And so what I really found to really light everyone on fire was the ability to create data models. We created a propensity to buy model, which looked at our customer history from the last 3 years, which was a typical kind of term and condition of a contract. It's 3 years. And we looked at what they went to next. So we looked over a 5-year period, but we started to see patterns in what type of company, what size of company, their revenue, their industry, who were the people, the roles involved in actually greenlighting that project. So we gathered all this information to create our ideal customer profile, and then we watched them move from one product to the next. And so we look for commonality. And then what we could do with that data is we could look at existing customers and say, oh, if you have product A, the next logical step, what the data tells us, is we need to approach you now with cross-selling or upselling to product C, or whatever that case may be. The great thing about that is you can also use that model in net new acquisition in greenfield. So again, that's just one small example of how data modeling or data intelligence can give you a cleaner, tighter, more specific roadmap for great targeting, which really helps you grab that low-hanging fruit.
That's incredible. And thank you so much for sharing that. As we often do, we kind of end our sessions a lot of times just saying marketing is a really exciting place to be. It's an exciting time to be a marketer. And so, Diane, we're so grateful for you to have joined us today. Thank you for being a part of the While You Were Working, this episode of While You Were Working. If you would like to connect with Diane, we'd like to give you some of her information. You can follow her on LinkedIn at Diane L. Walker. You could also find her on Twitter via at Diane Walker TX Texas. So we'll also have that in the show notes. We'll include that as well. As always, we'll have a link to this episode up very, very shortly on gorogue.net. And we will look forward to seeing you all next week on another episode of While You Were Working Live. See you next time.
Thanks, Chip.